Okay, totally different type of subject. Norwich is working on a $144 million school restructuring plan, and their goal is to put it on the referendum ballot in 2017 locally. So that means they would need state approval for it, they're estimating $87 million would be the state reimbursement level. Would you support that project specifically? And then what's your thoughts on local school project reimbursement? Because apparently it's coming up in a lot of towns in our area.
Mm-hmm. So specifically to the Norwich development, the information that I have from various sources is that is not necessarily the best use of taxpayer money. Both locally and statewide, that it could very well be a case of, because state money is potentially available, let's try to do this project. If you, it's the old axiom, if you tax something, you get less of it, you subsidize it, you get more. And this seems like it falls into the latter category. But what I would like to see happen in the state, quite frankly, is a hard look at a voucher system where you return the money back to the individual parents. They then shop around if they want to keep a child in local school, that's fine. If they want to have their child go to a vocational school, which I understand there are waiting lists to get into right now, opening that type of decision up to the market would necessitate that people would look at opening vocational schools, and filling that shortfall that the state on its own, with its own resources, because they fund the vocational school program at this stage, frankly, is probably not going to take a very hard look at. So, that's a longer term solution to the problem that you're talking about, but it's a route that I think that we should again take a hard look at going down, because everywhere that voucher programs have been instituted, they have been wildly popular with the parents who have children attending those schools, and the product of education that it's produced has been top notch. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't follow that path.
Ms. Hong.
Okay, to the question. Yes, I would support it. But however, my personal view about the school system, I understand why they need to do this. There is a real need for something to be done for the Norwich school system. I personally feel that neighborhood schools are probably the best possible way you can educate your own child. However, our budgets, it's now 2016, we don't leave at recess or at lunch to go home and have lunch with mom. So there's a real need to have some way of centralizing our schools so that a lot of the duplicate services can be cut. You have an easier way of protecting all the children. So I understand why they're looking at having this one mega school for the community. I hate to call it a mega school, but that's actually what they're looking at. So I do support it because I think it's a smart financial step for the city in helping to eventually reduce the cost of our Board of Ed budget component. It would help reduce a lot of the duplicate services, but it's not one that I think is what I would have hoped for. However, I think it's the only solution that is really available to most large communities now.
And to Mr. Dempsky's point, that
Vouchers?
Why not encourage school competition and empower parents and provide vouchers?
Having raised 3 children and having had to make the decision where my children were going to be educated, for the most part, yes, I wanted them in public school. I would not send them to, when they were in private school in their elementary grades. There was another personal reason why that decision was made. And because one of my children was there, I kept all 3 of them. But they all went to NFA. I have a very difficult time even imagining a public school system totally depleted of real resources, which is what happens when you have a voucher system.
All right, thank you. Representative Riley.
Sure. Obviously, this is a choice to be made by the citizens of Norwich in a referendum in 2017, as Claire said. And if they do choose to support it, I certainly would as well. And if I'm in the legislature, I'll work as hard as I can to make sure that money is provided to the city. The city of Norwich has a struggling school system in some regard right now. I mean, 70% of the students have free lunch or can apply for free lunch. We've got about 30 some odd different languages that are spoken in the school system, so it's very difficult to say that the change would be good or bad. But if it is something that the citizens of Norwich vote on in 2017, I would certainly help and work as hard as I can to make sure that money is provided by the state to build that different type of school system.
And since it was raised during our questioning, your position on vouchers and
I
school choice?
wouldn't support a voucher system. I think that would be too much of an overhaul of our education system at this point. I think obviously in the ruling that came out last week by Judge McCauser, the state of Connecticut really needs to look at how their education system is funded and what we can do to make sure that it is better funded for every individual kid, no matter where that child lives.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to give you a chance, Mr. Dempsky, that the criticism you hear of the voucher system is that it depletes our public schools, particularly our urban schools. So if you could address that criticism you hear of the voucher idea.
Well, so to the last point raised about the recent court decision, with a voucher system, you don't have a judge stepping in and making a decision like that, because there isn't this complicated and quite frankly unintelligible system by which cities and municipalities are reimbursed from the state. The average voter looking at that, they don't want to get involved with even trying to figure out how that's calculated. And quite frankly, a lot of lawmakers, I don't think really have a full grasp of how that's handled, which leads you to a judge making a decision such as that. So if parents are allowed to make the decisions that they think best suit their children and are best for their future, then that's an individual decision made by those people and not subject to this municipality gets that. Oh, they're doing well over in this town, so they get less money. No, everybody gets what they get, and you open the market. And look, I'm not naive enough to think that there aren't going to be growing pains associated with a change like that. Of course they're of course they're going to be. But in the end, in the final product, when people are allowed to make decisions for themselves with their money, I think that we end up overall with a better system, and we alleviate a lot of these concerns and questions.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Bonnie Hung.